So let's start. My name is Maxime Sanglan-Charlier. As you heard, it might sound a bit French, but actually I'm Belgian. But I'm living in France. I'm a consultant, facilitator, and trainer working for a company that is called Ardling, the company which is organizing DDD Europe conference. I'm also an event storming early adopter, and we will speak about this tool as well in that talk. I'm co-organizing the new crafts conference in Paris each year. Next year will be the 10th anniversary edition, so quite excited about it. 2023 videos are already online with a talk by Nick, including a talk by Nick, but other as well. I'm also part of the Virtual DDD team, and Virtual DDD is a website, virtualddd.com, where you should go. This is a place where you can find online resources about DDD. It's only online stuff like presentation, workshops, panel discussions, whatever. So there's a lot of things going on. You can go on the website and see. The next show is planned, I think, next month. It's up to you, Nick.
So like Max, I'm a consultant. I recently spent 3 years writing a book, which is almost finished. You got any questions about writing a book, all the things that can go wrong, all the stress, what the stress is like? I'd be very happy to share my experiences with you, but it's been a very rewarding experience, and I would encourage you to write a book. I'm also the co-organizer of the Domain-Driven Design London meetup. If ever you're in London, please drop by. Trying to do meetups every month. Also, always on the lookout for speakers. If you've got some topic, DDD, not DDD, if you're a first-time speaker, we're very happy to welcome you. So yeah, please get in touch if you're interested in attending or speaking. All right, Max, let's get to the juice. What are we going to cover today? So a lot of companies get stuck adding new features, takes a long time. They want to be able to develop software faster. Having a loosely coupled architecture is an important part in that process, so teams can work independently, make changes independently. Don't think there's any controversy there. What we're going to show you today is that in our experience, achieving a loosely coupled architecture benefits from having a domain-driven approach. If you can identify parts of your domain that are somewhat independent, you can get a more loosely coupled architecture. But how are we going to answer those questions?
Yeah, so that's the talk structure. So first of all, we will see how event storming can help us to map out the domain of our company, and then based on the result of those event storming sessions, we will be able to identify domain boundaries. But then, as a second step, we will see that we need to refine those boundaries to gain more confidence in those. And we will do that by testing them against real domain use cases. And we will use a technique called domain message flow modeling. That will be the second step of this talk. And then at the end, we will see how the bounded context canvas can help us as a third refinement tool to be able to define the roles and the responsibilities of each boundaries we found. Yep. So we have a little role play now. You will be the CEO of this company, I think.
So Max, I hired you as a CTO some years ago.
Sorry?
I hired you as a CTO some years ago, Max.
Okay.
And you've always performed well for this company. With the difficult times we've had, the good times and the bad, you've been a great CTO. I've got a mission for you now, and it's the biggest challenge that the company has faced. I need to know if you can help us. The industry is really hotting up. Over the next 5 years, we're going to have to double our revenue to capitalize on all of these new opportunities, because if we don't, the competition will. Can you do that? Or do I need to find a new CTO?
Well. Okay. Yeah, you forget maybe about something very, very important. Okay, you want to improve the system, but we have a very, 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 very old legacy system, and that will be quite a bit difficult. So I will have to ask also my principal engineer what he thinks about it, because alone I'm not sure I will be able to do that.
Okay, talk to your principal engineer, get his opinion, and let me know. I'll catch up with you in a couple of days.
So, principal engineer, what do you think about all this thing that we need to double or multiply our revenue and that we need to increase our velocity and whatever? So, what's your opinion on that?
Well, we've been telling you we need to spend some time refactoring our system and improving the technical debt because it's very difficult to work with, and you've never allowed us to do that, Mr. CTO. So I don't think we can even deploy the monolith once in 5 years, let alone deploying 50 times a day.
All right. No, we're kidding, but we are very serious now, Nick. So I really want you to think about how we could get there. What's in your mind right now?
Okay. I'll put my grudges with you to one side, and I'll think about how can we achieve this mission together and repair our relationship. So, my observations are the teams are used to working in a monolith and fixing bugs, adding new features. I just don't think the team we've got has the experience or the knowledge or the mindset to just do something radical like this.
All right, all right.
So I think that might be a problem here.
Yeah, I understand. So I've recently read a book which is called Team Topologies, and they say in that book that we need not to have two siloed teams, but instead we should have stream-aligned teams that are all working independently with fast flow. So that would be very, very good, I think, for the objectives the business is asking us to fulfill. So yeah, how could we get there?
If I could do this, will I get a promotion?
Yes, sure.
Okay, so I've got an idea. I've got an idea how we can achieve this. So I've been reading this stuff on GitHub called, it's the DDD crew. It's a bunch of resources from people who are practitioners of domain-driven design. It's some ideas about how we can go about refactoring our system, getting it more domain-driven. And I think if we take that approach, we can get to that team topologies vision of stream-aligned teams. If I remember correctly, I was reading something about a technique called event storming, and I think we should probably start there.
Yeah, so I give it a go. Please do it. Thanks. Let's give it a try.
Okay. So as we talked about, if we're going to think about how to create loosely coupled architecture, one of the first steps in that journey is looking at the business domain we're working in. How do we break up this domain into different areas? How can we approach that task? Different techniques out there. The technique we're fond of, or we use the most, I would say, is called event storming. So as you can see here, event storming is a very simple idea. If you haven't seen it, it involves putting orange post-its along the timeline, and the post-its represent domain events. So in this example here, we're describing some journey where someone located a scooter on the app. They went to the scooter, and they're trying to start a journey. We can see there are different flows here. On the bottom flow, the customer wasn't able to find a scooter. So we've got happy cases, we've got edge cases, modeling various flows and parts of the domain. We can zoom into the details and zoom out as we need to. It's not a structured technique where everything must be at a certain level of detail. It's quite a messy approach. And so here's how it looks in real life. You get a lot of people, you try and get as many different perspectives as possible. In this example here, we had people from sales, marketing, customer support, developers, the CEO, the CTO, and the COO were there. And this was the result of a whole day's worth of event storming. We mapped out this end-to-end flow, and the group identified 15 or more potential subdomains, we call them, in domain-driven design there. And what was interesting about this is there were lots of interesting conversations and discoveries along the way. It turned out there was a process with 180 steps. How can you have 180 steps in a process? It turns out there were lots of variations, and the sales team had been improvising with the tools they had. Of course, there were some spreadsheets involved, so all of this information comes to the surface. People can see the bigger picture, sharing insights across different roles and skills. Product and developers hadn't really had a relationship where they worked together so closely, so a real moment for this group of people to work in a different way. And that's what event storming is about. It's a great starting point for your architecture because raises a lot of interesting insights, and it gives you this nice event storm that you can partition, as we can see here. So this is a hypothetical example, not a real example, but as you can see, once you've got an event store mapped out, then you can really start thinking about architecture. This is how our business works. The event storming describes what's there now. It doesn't propose any structure. It doesn't force you to make any choices. It's just a case of, here's how our business works. And from that point, from that unbiased perspective, well, you will have some biases. You'll have worked in a system. You'll think certain things are related. So it's not completely unbiased. But with this flattened out version of your business, you can then start thinking about, how might we split this up? What would be different areas that a team could own that would lead us to a loosely coupled software architecture as well? Once you've started identifying those subdomains, it's quite useful to actually get into the details a bit, go a level deeper, and start verifying things. So in this example here, we've got a pickup and drop-off subdomain. This is about someone's bought a car online, and the company has to drop it off at their house. So we start by writing down the purpose of the subdomain. Already that can give us some clues. And then we can go through each event and just say, does this feel like it belongs here? We're not getting into anything precise at this point. We're just asking, do these events all feel related? So picked up the new car from the warehouse. Well, that's kind of in the name of the subdomain, pickup. Sounds good. Arrived at the customer's house, offloaded the car. These all sound like events related to pick up and drop off, so it feels like we've made a good choice here. Then we get to 2 question marks. We've got, gave the new owner a guide of the car. Is that, it's part of this process of dropping off the car and helping the customer to take ownership, but maybe a guide of the car might be something separate. And also breakdown insurance. That feels like it might not be quite related here. So at this point, we're just exploring possible boundaries and having high-level conversations. We're not trying to be too precise, not trying to get locked into any particular choices, just exploring. And we can do this as a whole group. Because there's nothing overly technical here, we can discuss domain boundaries with anyone in our company who has an interest. So as you go through this process, you'll have to pick between different heuristics for finding the boundaries. And often there's a competition. So it's good to know about the different heuristics you've got to choose from. So this example here, simplest possible approach, you take some process, you break it up into steps, and each step in the process is a separate subdomain. This example here, there's a place order journey, search and browse, product details, cart and checkout. They might be the right boundaries for this company, they might not be. It's one heuristic. Another approach is where you identify these process-based subdomains, and then you start to ask the question, are we seeing anything common across these processes or journeys that might make sense extracting and consolidating into its own specific subdomain? Of course, if you look at the 2 options here, with approach A, we've got no dependencies or no visible dependencies. We could talk about change coupling. But in the second option, we've decided we're going to have this subdomain that deals with everything about notifications. These other subdomains don't have to worry about that anymore, but at the cost of a dependency. And then thirdly, if you're into domain-driven design, you know that people in DDD always talk about language. Look at the way people talk about your domain, and that gives a lot of clues about how you might want to slice your domain boundaries. In this example here, we've got the concept of a customer. In person, we're talking about one actual person. But in different parts of our business, we have a more specific name for that person when they're trying to achieve a specific person. In this example, we've got a lead the marketing team might use, a rider in the context of taking a journey, and an account holder when we're talking about billing. So 3 different heuristics there, process-based, consolidation-based, language-based. These are the kind of things we can look for in an event storming session, and we can experiment with the event storm. It's very easy to explore different possible boundaries.
All right. Seems good. I had excellent feedback from those sessions you've made, the event storming. So I think it went great.
So I can have a promotion now then?
Let's wait a little bit. Can you tell me a bit more about
How
those?
about a pay rise?
No, about the event storming.
Okay.
So how it went?
Yeah, I think it went good. I'm glad you heard some good feedback. I enjoyed the sessions, working with lots of different people, and we've got some good ideas about how we could evolve the system.
Good ideas?
Yeah, we've identified what could be some possible subdomains that could be the right way to model our teams and system.
Could. Should or could? Because I think we should maybe now try to be sure that those boundaries should be the right ones. So how we would do that?
Well, I think here you are again with your unrealistic expectations. This is what I was talking about earlier. So what we've done so far, we've used event storming, we've found some possible boundaries, but we're kind of at a high level. We haven't really got into the details and thought about how we might do that. Okay. We need to go a level deeper and identify how this thing might fit together as a software architecture before I can say to you we've actually got the final choices.
All right, I understand. Okay, let's go for it. All right, so as Nick said, during the event storming session, you were able to identify the boundaries of your domain, but this is really your first draft. This is not what become your software architecture or your boundaries of your software. Those are just bets in the future, and you don't want to build your entire platform on bets, I guess. So yeah, so you need to find a way to make sure those boundaries are realistic. So how do I know if my boundaries are right? So those refinement cycles that we are entering right now has already been told by Eric Evans. This is a good idea to do, and so he built this model exploration whirlpool where he explained that you need to enter into different refinement cycles until you find the right model or the right boundary. So this is not new. This is something Eric Evans has already been doing. So Eric, by the way, is the author of the DDD Blue Book. So first of all, you need to collect scenarios. So this is what Nick done and explained with the event storming. You go with your domain experts, you ask them to tell stories, so you collect reference scenarios with them, and then you will have to walk through those scenarios to be able to propose a model for them. And then as soon as you have enough information, you can start doing some code probe, and if you feel like you don't have enough information or there's still gray area, so you go into another refinement cycle and ask your domain experts for more information. When you will be doing those refinement cycles, you will also be looking at the coupling between your different subdomains. And Vladimir Kononov has an interesting formula about how to measure coupling between two different components or systems. And this formula helps you to measure the pain of coupling, which is quite interesting. So first of all, you need to think about the strengths, which is how much coupled your systems are together. So if it's just a system that emit an event and then there's another system that has subscribed to this event, well, you have a coupling, but it's quite low. But if you have multiple microservices, let's say, that share a single database, well, here the strength is very high. So you have a very high coupling here. Very great strength. The volatility is how likely your two coupled systems will change together, how much they will have to change together whenever someone is making a change in system A. Does it have an impact on system B? So if it's, well, sometimes, so the volatility is low, but if it's always the case that when you modify A, you have an impact on B, then the volatility is high. And the distance is how far those two coupled things are far away or not. If it's in the same team, I mean, if the same team is handling two coupled systems, so the distance is near zero, so it doesn't matter, so the pain will be lower. But if you think about two systems that are coupled, that one team is working in Sydney and the other one in Copenhagen, so yeah, everything will be async, so the distance is really great and the pain will increase. And of course, the more the pain, the less likely you will be able to change anything in your system. So to identify those, to refine and to be sure that our boundaries are better defined, then we can have a look at the coupling as well. We will use the domain message flow modeling technique, which is another one available on the DDD crew GitHub repository. And how does this work? It's really simple. First of all, you collect the reference scenarios, as Eric Evans already said in his Whirlpool process. Then you will pick up one, and you will start with an actor or a system or a domain as a starting point, and then you will create a message that needs to be sent. Then you will add the recipient, and you connect both with the line, and you repeat until you're done. So it seems quite simple. Let's take an example, another simple example as well. And here we have the scenario where you're placing an online order when all items are in stock. And this is the first part, it's very important, is that you need to be very explicit about what you are, why you are doing this diagram. Here, you know already that all items are in stock, so you won't have to check for those items in stock, of course, in this diagram. So it's the same if you want to deal with edge cases. Here it's just the happy path. So if you want to test your boundaries against a scenario where the payment would fail or the payment platform would be down, so you will have to create a new diagram and a new scenario where the payment platform is down, for example. So as I said, you start with any kind of actor, domain, or system. So here's the shopper with his app. He placed an order on sales boundary, and the sales boundary is emitting an event order place, which is interesting for billing. So the billing knows now that it has to charge a credit card, and as soon as it's done, it will emit another event payment collected for sales to update the status of the order maybe. And also it will send a notification and send an email back to the shopper. So this is quite very simple, but this is the way it works. And it's very easy to use those kind of diagram to see how your different boundaries are interacting with each other based on a specific scenario. You can add some more information if you want to add the payload of the message, for example, what kind of data is needed inside all the different events or command or queries that you would do during the scenario. You can add it as well, but maybe as a second step. So why this technique is very interesting is that, first of all, it's pretty easy to do. And second is that, well, you can easily spot design smells or potential issues in your design. So just by looking at it, this is the power or visualizing thing, is that you can already maybe spot some patterns or things that might go wrong or that are not well designed. And in the first example, for example, the customer is making through the app a command on a service, let's say, and the service needs to do 4 different queries because before it can handle the command to fulfill the order first. So here you might think, well, maybe we could change the design in a way that when the customer is making that command, this boundary here has already enough information without to have to query about other things. Or it might be that it's a perfect design for a current situation where you would like to extract a service from a legacy system, and the legacy system still owns the data, and you are still obliged to query again and again this legacy until you own the data in your own service. So that could be also explaining a particular situation where you are migrating from a monolith to some microservices architecture, for example. In the second example, that's the same. You can easily see that, well, the boundary in the middle is just acting like passing message to the other. So whenever you need to do a command on the first one, it needs to call another one through this one. But maybe, again, this is a good choice because that could be a platform or gateway or whatever in front of different other services. So by just doing that, you can create your own diagrams, and if you want another perspective on that, you can give it to another team and ask them, well, what do you think about it? Even if they don't know about your domain or the feature you're working on, just by looking at it, it's pretty easy to maybe spot some problems. You can also easily visualize different options. I won't go in detail for that one, but in the first option, we have several boundaries. We have a discount decider, discount calculator, personal account, so on. And in option 2, they simplified the way it was done by making maybe some query up front so that the sales have enough information to call the discount calculator so we can get rid of the discount decider. Those are 2 options. So you now have the ability to vote or ask your team to vote on which one is the best, or doing pros and cons on those 2 options. It's really easy to copy and paste. But please, if you do the first option, and then if someone in the team says like, well, I do not agree, I would like to do this and that, well, stop him or he or she and create a new diagram before starting discussing. Don't discuss something which is not visualized, please. So as soon as it's visualized, it's easier to see the differences between the different options. And here's a case study I've done with a company that was migrating a huge accounting legacy system. And they tried first to extract the fixed asset module. And here's a scenario about fixed asset sales, how the sales of fixed asset is working. And first of all, they did this event storming. They came out with like different boundaries. And those 4 boundaries in step 1 were the one that were supposed to be there to fulfill this fixed asset sales scenario. But then they saw that it was not that efficient, and maybe too much dependencies, too much copying, or too tiny things. So they decided to bring back different thing inside the same boundary. So we have now the sales revaluation instead of having a different thing. And then another person came and said, well, actually, for all the computations, we really need different skills for that team, so it will be separate people, so they should be inside another team working only on algorithms and stuff like that. So they decided to put all the computing into one boundary and keep the fixed asset sale and keep this sale behavior in this fixed asset. So you see that it's not always that you have big boundaries and you want to decompose them into smaller ones. It's sometimes the other way around, that you have smaller boundaries and you realize that it will make too much coupling and too much communication between all those pieces of systems, and that you want to simplify this. So yeah, this technique is very, very cool because it's very easy to use. It will let you identify the interaction dependencies, the coupling between the part of your systems. And of course, you will, as I said, validate through real use cases of your domain. It will help out to see the different coupling of in your boundaries, so you can maybe try to lower that coupling by having multiple options and visualize them, and you will see how your systems are communicating with each other. And so, of course, at the end, you have better defined boundaries. Great. Go back to that. So, how did it go? You said, now I need a bit more time to be sure that my boundaries are right. I gave you that time, so now I think you're done, right?
Pretty much, except I think we just need. So we've made some improvements, I think, from the initial proposal. It's feeling a bit more concrete. People are feeling like, yeah, we could kind of start to implement that, but I still feel some doubts, not 100%, but I think you're never 100%, so I feel like we're ready to implement the first step.
All right, okay. That would be great, actually, if we could send a good sign to the board by making this first step by 3 months. Would it be possible?
I think where my head is right now, we've done all this message flow modeling. We've got all these scenarios mapped out. I think we just need to consolidate it, to put all that together and to clearly articulate what is it we're going to try and build in the first 3 to 6 months. I feel like if we do that, I can come back to you with a very concrete proposal. And yeah, I feel positive right now.
Okay, think about your salary increase. Yep, see you in a few moments then.
Cool. So I'm going to quickly talk now about service roles and responsibilities. So We've identified these possible domain boundaries. We've done some message flow modeling. We've got these different perspectives on our boundaries. And before you start implementing it, it's always a good idea to just consolidate what you've got into a single picture and say, does this all look cohesive? Does it make sense? Can we start implementing it? And so that's what the bounded context canvas is useful for. You can take all of your scenarios involving a particular service, particular context, and put them all together in one overall view. It's not a magic tool, but it's one way to structure all the information. So let's have a look at the canvas itself. I think there are 9 sections there. And basically, what we're touching on at the top is, what's the name? What's the purpose? How important is this from a business perspective? And at the bottom, what we're looking at is, what are the responsibilities in terms of what does it have to handle coming from other parts of the system, and what responses does it need to give? And what are some of the business rules and the key domain terms inside there? I'm not trying to capture every single thing here, but all the key details so we can actually make that decision. Let's do this. So we've got an example here, which is a bookings service. You can see from the description, it handles all the bookings, every single booking, it handles it. It's highly customizable. So the purpose is telling us there's a clear intention here to handle something very generic. And if we look at the bottom of the canvas, we can kind of see that. We've got these CRUD events: create order, update order, delete order. These are normally words we use when we're talking about databases and more technical things. So there's a lot of things we can take from this canvas. The first one is on the business level. Why are we trying to create something so generic? Why are we trying to handle all the bookings for all possible scenarios? Is the purpose just wrong here? Before we analyze the design, are we trying to solve something here that just shouldn't be solved in this way? And then looking at those messages as we talked about, we might realize, we thought the purpose was to do something generic, and we've built this generic system, but actually we could have built something much more specific. So the key thing is we've got all of this in one place, and we can just have a quick overall check and clarify, is it good, is it not good? Do we implement, or do we need to spend some more time in design here? Next example is this fleet management thing. And I'm going to use the word thing because it's big and it's hairy, and it doesn't know when to delegate to other things. So what we can see here straight away is the number of collaborators on both sides. There's 4 on the left, 4 on the right, and actually on the right it's got many consumers. So already that's a warning sign. We've got the word management as well, which is normally an indicator that we're using a generic word because we can't describe more clearly what this is doing. And if we start looking at those messages down there, I need to squint a bit, we can start imagining how might we pull those things out. So get the scooter location, check out the scooter, check in the scooter. Okay, there's some cohesion there. Demand forecasted, wow, that does not seem related to the scooter's location. So we can imagine how we might pull that apart. As we talked about, naming is quite important. And this is one of the first hurdles where we can have a lot of conversations. So I think there's a couple of tips I would keep in mind, a couple of little cliches. Or the first one, generic names attract generic behavior. If you see words like management, then you can put a lot of things in there, and the name doesn't tell you that doesn't belong here. If you use a more specific, a more precise name, it's clear when you're adding something into a service that doesn't logically belong there. Something else you can do with the canvas when you've got all the collaborators in one place is you can go through each of those dependencies, you can apply Vladic's formula, as Maxime was talking about, and you can go through the different tips here. So for every dependency, you can ask, what would it take to remove that dependency from the system? Maybe you can remove a dependency, but that will result in some duplication somewhere else. So you can explore those options. Another one, the third point, I'd say the third point here is the really interesting thing that always comes up. Looking at the names of those messages, where's a service getting its data from? Am I getting the scooter's location from the pricing service? Because that is really not something that should be happening. So looking at those messages, looking at the data that's moving around, looking at where it's come from and it's going to, that can really throw up some weird design choices. I think it's time to wrap things up, Max. I've got a promotion party to go to, so let's bring this home.
So yeah, as a wrap-up, I will show you this picture of the domain-driven design starter modeling process, which is another resource that you can find on the DDD crew GitHub repository. And this is kind of the view of what DDD is covering, the holistic view of what DDD is covering, from aligning from your business model and user needs, discovering your domain, until code. So you have the discovering part, you have the strategic part of DDD, and you have the tactical part of DDD on that picture. So you have a lot of different steps, and of course there's not a single way to go through those steps. It's really depending on your context. It might be that you will go to discover, you will have enough information to go directly into code, and maybe you will realize that you have some missing information, so you will go back to that. That's why we have those arrows, which are the same rows as in the Whirlpool model of exploration of Eric Evans, of course. You will go back and forth. It's iterative. It's very important. You will experiment even in the code. Sometimes get more feedback, and then realize that, well, it's not enough. You need to go back, discover again a bit more your domain, decomposing a bit more, connecting stuff. So what we've been through during this talk is those different steps. The event storming is on the discover part, obviously, where you will discover your domain collaboratively with all the stakeholders, and then you will decompose it into subdomains, and this will be your first boundaries that you will have to refine, and then you can use the domain messageflow modeling to refine those boundaries, for example, and then in this connect phase you will try how things are talking to each other, if there's not too much chattiness or whatever. And in the define section, this is where you gather all the information you've collected from the previous steps, and you put it at the single place, and you will see if it makes sense or not. And based on that, you can have more feedback and go back maybe if you need more information. So yeah, really depending on your context, you might not have to have those steps. Maybe you want just to focus on strategize stuff or organize your team. So those are different steps here that are described in on the GitHub page. And there's a lot of different tools that you can use for each step. So there's event storming, there's domain messageflow modeling, but there are other tools that are available for this. So please have a look at this page, and you will see a lot of tools, and maybe tools that you are already using in your company. So, yep.
So we've talked about these techniques, and I think it's one thing to talk about the techniques, but it's a different thing to actually apply these concepts in your company. And this may or may not apply to you, but in a lot of companies, doing stuff like event storming requires a mindset shift. So let's say, for example, I'm talking to a CTO or a COO, they've got some big project, and it's like, oh, event storming's perfect here. Let's get people together, let's map this all out, and let's really figure things out before we start building stuff and reshaping the system. And we'll give him a shopping list, like not a shopping list, but an attendee list, let's say. Let's get this team, these experts, this product person, and they'll say something like, that's a lot of developers. Can I just bring the tech lead instead? And those developers can keep working back in the office. So I think all of these techniques that we're talking about really depend on having an openness to collaborating and getting different perspectives in the room from all across your company, being willing to map things out visually. I see there's a lot of resistance sometimes. Oh, they're just going to get together, put some Post-its on the wall. It's all that hippie stuff. If you're not typing, then it doesn't matter. So I'm not going to stand here and try and convince you. I'm just going to say, if you do want to go down this approach, then an openness to visual collaboration is quite essential. Here are some links and books we recommend. And that's everything from us. Any final words from you, Max?
No, it's okay. Thank you very much, Nick.
Thank you.
And congrats for your increase. Congratulations for your increase, salary increase.